Gaming has only seemed to grow over the last few years. Now thanks to people being forced into quarantine, leaving most of us to try and find ways to avoid spending quality time with our family. And for some of us, by quality time, I mean doing bullshit around the house we were pretending to be too busy to do before. When you're really just out stalking that hot barista you never had the balls to speak to outside of giving her your order, and then you thought hiding your fear behind a mask of masculine misogyny was a good idea. What? A little too real, huh? Alright then, let's back this up a bit. Point is, people have been getting more into video games while the industry has steadily been evolving. Technology is now allowing you to see the peach fuzz on a woman's face, for some of us without running the risk of having the police called for being uninvitingly so close to the opposite sex for once. In other games, having horseballs shrink in real time. Shit is nuts. The attention to detail in the world, characters, and overall storytelling makes John Carmack's quote about story in video games the post-nut clarity of the industry these days. Some games excel at their story, others their gameplay, the world, and art style, while games like Deathloop excel at being, well, uniquely bad in just about everything it tries at. Then we arrive at the Middle-earth games. The Middle-earth games have managed to both be exciting, revolutionary, and genre-defining, which is a little confusing since they've also been described as ripping off the likes of Rocksteady's Arkham games, combat style, and Assassin's Creed's climbing mechanics, which they nailed when it comes to response. They suck just like them. Then you have the sequel, Shadow of War, completely destroying its initial reception by turning the game into a giant grind fest and implementing loot boxes. Which, it's one thing to add in loot boxes at a time when loot boxes were hated, but it's a whole nother thing to add in loot boxes at a time where they were absolutely loathed, and they also undermined the biggest and best feature of your single player game, smart marketing. As if that wasn't enough, it also looked like Warner Brothers and Monolith were trying to profit off a deceased member from their studio at the time, so yeah, not too many positives for the game at launch, but hey, people have a short attention span. But all bad press aside, both games are still ones I'd personally highly recommend. The story is hard to really give a rating on, since when you're dealing with established IPs like Lord of the Rings, where there's already existing lore, characters, factions, and the like, there's canon that you can't really ask the long-time or dedicated fans to turn a blind eye to. And for me personally, I've never watched or read anything about Lord of the Rings, so I don't know how this fits in with the canon. But long-time fan or just playing because you want to decapitate your favorite D&D cosplayers, I think we can all agree on one thing. The story in this game is like a story in a porn movie. The beauty of these games really lie in the Nemesis System, the game's fundamental reason why you'll never be able to trust anybody close to you again. It's kind of ironic how this game's idea of fun is nurturing a domestic level of PTSD with a splash of personality disorder. Seriously, the amount of times I've been betrayed or devastatingly taught the life lesson of no matter how hard you try and how well you treat someone else, the time and care put in is ultimately meaningless, since they will either try to kill you or die savagely in front of your eyes. And there's nothing you can do about that. The Nemesis System is basically a feature where every orc in this game is unique. They have their own personalities, strengths, weaknesses, and in some cases quirks.
I don't know. I know what it is to return from death. I laid in its cold grasp on the battlefield until a squirming, wriggling warmth took over me. 1,000 pulsing maggots crawled over and into me, scouring the dead flesh from my ragged wounds. Now they are with me, always, a churning, writhing horde of torment.
These games have a basic hierarchy of captains and war chiefs that you can systematically take down. Each of these orcs can also remember the last time they fought or seen you.
No! You're supposed to be dead! Ugh. You're making me look like a liar! Fine! I killed you before. I'll do it again for everyone here to see! Honor me for killing you. They threw this magnificent feast. Succulent meat and tasty grog. But as lovely as it all was, something was missing. And now here it is!
Stories within stories in this game. Basic orcs can also kill you, level up, become a captain, sometimes an unbelievably powerful captain, and remember the last time or times, like I said, they killed you or you killed them. In the cases where they sometimes somehow cheat death and come back with a visual add-on that'll cost you an additional $5 to reclaim your honor if this was an EA game.
I should thank you. Whatever magics you used when you took my head will not allow me to die. Getting killed by you was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Luckily for everyone, it's not, and even more lucky, I just wanted to say that 85% of my daily viewers are not subscribed. I'm kidding, I fucking hate that. What I meant to say is the loot boxes in Shadow of War have thankfully been fully removed, and everything can be earned 100% in-game now, without the temptation of spending real-life money for an imaginary orc that'll die in the first imaginary battle, leaving you with very real anger and shame for poor financial decision-making. And I gotta say, with the market and predatory system completely gutted out of the sequel, I prefer it so much more now. Mordor, the first game, I think has a better color palette, with it being a little more darker and serious in tone, and it's kind of a shame they didn't keep it that way with the sequel. And of course, the Nemesis system in the first game is a bit more simplified, which is honestly a catch-22 in of itself, because with it being the first game to implement it, it's not as fleshed out, meaning there won't be as many surprises and personalities as the offering of Shadow of War, but that also means in this game you won't be running into war chiefs and captains that become invulnerable to damn near everything, while also running the risk of having your entire army betray you at the drop of a hat. So the first game is a little less of a headache and more of mindless fun, decapitation, and mind-fucking everyone. Well, the sequel, Shadow of War, I know it wasn't smart to cover both in a video, but bear with me, has exactly what you'd expect a good or at least halfway decent sequel to do. Flesh out and elaborate more on what made the original successful, or at least not completely forgotten, which in these games' case being the Nemesis system and the orcs you're fighting. The orcs come from different tribes in the sequel, adding even more variety beyond just basic weapon preferences that puts them in general class differences, like the defenders that walk around with shields and halberders, and the only way to really defend them is by vaulting over and attacking them from behind, or savages where you have two axes and you have to actually daze them before you can engage in battle. Shadow of War also offers sieges, which gives you the ability to raid or defend a fortress in your own game, or you can also head online and raid other players' fortresses. This puts you in charge of assigning leaders, and for each leader assigned you can equip either defensive or offensive capabilities depending on obviously which one you're doing, giving you the chances from reinforced metal walls to mounted archers or fiery siege weapons to help take over the local region. This is honestly one of the aspects I actually love and hate at the same time the most from this game. I love it because there's so much damn chaos with seemingly everyone and everything around you engaging in a life or death struggle. You can also brand enemy captains of another player and bring him back into your game if you wanted to, which is kind of the aspect that replaced that marketplace that they gutted from the game. But it's fun. You know, it's nice, chaotic, and big epic battles. What kind of sucks about it is some orcs online are damn near immortal. You can face off against one that is practically invincible to everything but one specific thing, which might be something as simple as vaulting over them, allowing you to freeze them in place, giving you the opportunity to unleash a flurry of attacks, or maybe they're vulnerable and can be pinned in place with an arrow. That's all cool and all, but when you realize that they can actually adapt mid-fight, then it's all over, because now, instead of dominating and owning that orc, now it becomes a fight for survival. And if you're anything like me and have the temperament and personal discipline of a 4-year-old, your fist is going to get acquainted with that wall very quickly. The online aspect, I think, is really meant for those that want their skills to be put to the test, as I found the hardest orcs you run into are actually those that other people have defending their forts. But if you're talking strictly single player here, you can actually weaken the AI's defenses by doing a few different things. You can outright draw a war chief out and his bodyguards, which are basically orcs that are still more powerful than the usual grunts. They're still captains, they're just the personal bodyguards of a war chief, and with the war chief being alive, he's essentially in charge of a specific defensive line of a fort you're trying to take down. So you can do it, as I was saying, a couple different ways. You can draw out the war chief with all his captains, basically meaning you're fighting anywhere from 1 to 5 captains at once, or you can play it smart. Kill off the war chief's bodyguards or brand them and set up a betrayal mission, basically allowing his trusted brethren to do the killing for you, or you can actually plant them and wait for the siege itself, and then the spies you plant betray them, essentially giving you double agents while you're raiding their fort. The only downside to that is because you didn't kill the war chief, you're fighting through that defensive line that you could otherwise taken out a long time ago. But betrayal missions, ambush missions, nemesis missions, hunts, sending captains to reinforce each other or infiltrate a war chief or even a warlord and plant them as spies, send death threats to other captains. These games show that obviously the world and the lore that takes place in these games are in a perpetual struggle. There's always someone trying to kill someone, and the beauty is you're at the center of it. You are creating your own personal experience. I see people say that, yeah, the combat and the gameplay of these games are extremely repetitive. Arguably, they are. I mean, every game is ultimately, but you don't see anything quite like the Nemesis system in any other game. And unfortunately, Warner Brothers ended up getting the patent for the Nemesis system, so we'll probably never see anything like this outside of whatever Monolith is working on, which they did tease a couple months ago that they are working on a very original Wonder Woman game that is going to have the Nemesis system System. So I'm personally excited for that, but let me know if you guys have ever played the Middle-earth games. If you haven't and you are actually a PC player, you can get both games for $10 as of right now, thanks to the Steam Summer Sale. On console, you can probably get either of these games for like $20. They're usually normally on sale. The games are pretty old. Shadow of War came out in 2017. The first one came out in 2014. Personally, I think they aged nicely, and I still hop into both of them from time to time just to go on a mindless killing spree. But I just wanted to go down a quick memory lane and reminisce a little bit about the Nemesis system, which hopefully we'll start seeing in more games very soon.